There's a lot more people up here when you're standing. So I'm going to just preface this that I was asked to do this, and normally I don't have a problem talking. I have a really good gift of gab, but I hear the laughing. But this was pretty hard because I think that when we look at healing stories and we look at our lives in terms of that, we can pick out moments. This one specifically is a physical healing aspect. But we all have moments of healing every day. And in going through this process of rewording this, writing this down, it's brought to light that, every day God is healing me. And it's not just a physical thing. It's a moment of the heart. It's a moment of the mind. It's a moment of the body. It's a moment of the community as well. And just because I have this story, everybody has this story. The details are different, but we all have this. And I just thank you that I can share this with you guys and that you guys have shared your healing stories with me as well. It's super important. So I'm going to read from this so I don't miss anything, so please don't mind as my head is down. I remember only snippets of what happened because I was so young. They say that significant events are the most memorable, though. This was significant for a young Liz of age 4 or 5. I remember Point Farms campground only by some memories of the campsites and the programs they ran in the event center. I do remember our family friends camping with us. I remember laughing and playing with my sisters. I actually remember falling in the fire. After that, I remember only a flurry of activities that involved me being grabbed by an adult and held under the water taps, while other adults wrapped me in towels and put me in a minivan. I remember the look of worry on Kathy's face as she closed the door to the van and her daughter held my sister's back. The next thing I remember was being in a hospital bed that seemed really high in the air. Excuse me. It was like a bunk bed or something, and being only in a t-shirt and underwear. I remember feeling uncomfortably underdressed. The next thing I remember was being back home and going into the emergency room in our little hospital and the doctor checking out my foot. I have clear memories of the burnt skin hanging on the bottom edge of my foot. The next memory is being in a little red wheelchair and my dad's house coat strap being the only thing holding me in that chair. I remember being allowed to go down the driveway in my red wheelchair to wait with the girl my mom babysat. When her bus picked her up, I managed to get back to the house fine, but sat at the bottom of the big step crying and yelling for Mom since I couldn't get in the house myself. I don't really remember anything more than that as a child. When I was in my mid-teens, I looked down at my hand and saw a dark mark on it. I thought it was new and it freaked me out. I hadn't noticed it before. This was the first time that I realized I had a scar, and Mom explained where I got the scar from. There are a few pictures here and there of me in my little red wheelchair and Dad's robe strap holding me in. Most of the memory gaps surrounding my falling into the campfire are filled in by my parents, who had a whole other perspective on the event. Traumatizing, I'm sure. My mom later told me that she was supposed to go to a ladies' retreat the days following my accident and was obviously unable to attend. She called the organizers, and it turned out I became one of the serious topics of prayer that weekend. Nothing like a couple hundred ladies praying for a child. I'm sure the sweetest sound to God's heart. My home church was also praying fastidiously for my healing and the care of my family. Our church understood the element of lifting up their children to the great healer, as myself and a few other kids my age had already suffered some serious health issues in our young lives. During my tenure in the little red chair, the 3rd-degree burns on my feet had become infected, and our wonderful family doctor had us visiting his house daily in off hours to change those bandages. After a horrible few days of infection, Dr. Bill had a very pointed conversation with my parents about what would happen if the infection didn't subside. I remember heading to their house in the country and getting put in a chair on the wraparound porch where he changed the bandages. Whether this was the moment or one of the others, I don't know, but my parents informed me that barely a day after the conversation about the infection, Dr. Bill pulled off the bandages to find new pink skin and no infection. Dr. Bill didn't have an explanation, but Mom sure did, and she wasn't afraid to tell him. how hundreds of people praying to a healer God would do it. Dr. Bill had been my doctor since I was a few months old and eventually started calling me the miracle baby. I wasn't supposed to live past a few months. God used the health issues of my young life and my parents' faith and fortitude to reach this wonderful doctor for Jesus. All in all, I was in that wheelchair for only 2 weeks after receiving third-degree burns on my backside and my feet, plus the gangrenous infection. I don't know where Dr. Bill is today, but I know where I am and where my family is. We celebrate that God healed me, and I often try to contemplate the depth of love that God could have for me, specifically to have brought me out of a childhood filled with illness and clumsiness. I struggle with understanding who he heals, but that's where faith comes in, and I regularly remind myself that God has a plan for my life, and if I keep falling into the strength of that plan, no matter how much I mess up, he will unravel it and me and his ultimate glory and testimony. Thanks.